Hey y'all, welcome back to this week's episode of AMA Friday with Amy Miller, recruiting in yoga pants. So let's talk about internal transfers. This is sure to ruffle feathers, no doubt. I just want to touch on this real quick in our last week of 2022. What a year. Oh, I'm exhausted. I don't know about y'all, but I am so tired. So tired. But let's talk internal transfers. I see people get really worked up about this, really mad, thinking that some internal came in at the 11th hour and stole their job or cost them a commission. I hear that from recruiters a lot. I just want to tell you what I typically see from a corporate recruiter seat, how internal transfers, how internal candidates are looked at, the lens through which we're reviewing all those things, and hopefully put you at ease. I don't want you to stress about this. I don't want you to overthink it. Most importantly, you're never really going to know what your competition is. I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent here, a little sidebar. Okay, bear with me. I see a lot of people complain, like they're genuinely angry or frustrated or whatever, and these emotions are all normal. Like, don't think I'm saying you shouldn't feel what you feel. You absolutely should feel whatever you feel, but I think sometimes that anger is misplaced. So I've heard people say things like, I can't believe they had me go through the interview process and then just hired an internal anyway. I mean, the reality is you might have been going through the process at the same time. You might have been being considered in tandem with another external, with an internal, with who knows how many people. And the team made a decision based on the information that they gathered through the process. And it just so happened, for whatever reason, that internal candidate was the better fit. I mean, it happens. It could have been another external person that got the job over you. It could have been you that got the job over somebody else. So when we get spun up about that and like, oh, I dodged a bullet, that place doesn't deserve me, blah, 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 that feels weird to me. I mean, again, I'm not trying to discourage you from feeling your feelings. Maybe save that, for like your dog, or your spouse, or your best friend. Putting it on LinkedIn and complaining loudly that, that company made a bad decision because they went with someone they felt was better fit for whatever reason, internal or external. It just feels weird. I don't know. Anyway, rant over. Let's get back to the topic. Something to think about. So internal talent, typically, most places I've worked have operated this way. We publish the role on both internal and external sites at the same time. We consider applications in the order received. Internal or external, doesn't matter. We're going through them when we get them, right? The one big difference is a lot of internal, a lot of internal recruiting, hiring, interviewing is driven by the hiring manager. And what I mean by that, sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. What I mean by that, I hope I'm not getting sick. I don't think I've been sick this year. Have I? I don't know, I'm probably getting sick. Anyway, sidebar. My point is, a lot of that is driven by the hiring manager. So internally, you may have the benefit of being able to see who the manager is, pick up the phone. I'd love to do an informational, interview with you. I'm interested in exploring roles outside of where I'm at today, those kinds of things. So internals may have a little bit of a leg up in that regard because they're more likely to have access to the hiring authority. And they already have that institutional knowledge. They work for the company. They're probably familiar with certain tools that might be used, things like that. So those sometimes can be factors in why an internal person might be more appealing, or maybe, if a manager is ranking resumes, they may put an internal at the top of the list. I mean, we can't get around that. It is what it is. And it also brings up an interesting point. And I want y'all to keep this in mind too, because if you were the internal, you would want to be recognized and valued for your contributions and your knowledge and your experience. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand growth potential, ability to move around an organization, transfer opportunities, learning opportunities. You can't want all of that for yourself and not expect other people to have the same opportunities. That's how I have framed this when I've lost out on roles to internal transfers. I've said, well, that's actually a good sign. I like that they promote from within. I like that they allow for movement within the organization. A lot of internal transfers are lateral moves, by the way. Promotions typically happen in the same team. Going from one team to the next usually is lateral, meaning same compensation, same job title, same band, all those things. So again, you need to understand, from your recruiter and from your manager, what it looks like in your organization, but that's pretty common that it would be lateral. So we want that opportunity internally. We want that as employees. We want to be able to move around and grow and learn and expand our scope and all those things. But we also want diversity. We also want fresh ideas. We also want people who have other experiences and fill in knowledge gaps or skill gaps that don't exist on the team. So external hiring is also really important. And this is part of the decision, part of the conversation that I'm having with my leaders when we're developing our recruiting strategy, when we're thinking about hiring. And one of the things we will talk about, whether this is like early stage, like, oh, you're going to hire 100 people this year? Okay, cool. Let's break that down. What does that look like? Or, oh, you're opening a rec for a new whatchamacallit. Okay, let's discuss. One of the things that we are going to discuss is buy versus build. So what I mean by buy versus build, so buy is I'm going to go and buy this talent. I'm going to go out onto the market and I'm going to find the external people, or hopefully they're going to apply, and I'm going to buy, or rent by the hour, baby. I'm going to buy this skill set that we don't have on our team. This is very common. I have been working with a specific business group. A lot of you are familiar with this. That is very startup-y. We were hiring people to do things that had never been done in this organization before. So of course, I'm going to go have to buy that talent. It doesn't exist internally. I don't care where you look, right? We haven't done this thing before. So that's the other thing that we have to consider. The other half of that is build. So we're going to buy, that's kind of the external recruiting effort. Build is the internal, getting people up to speed, providing those training opportunities, providing growth, that kind of stuff. So a good recruiting strategy is both. We are going after the external, specialized, new, fresh talent. We are providing opportunities for our internal teams to move around, to grow, to transfer, to try new things. Like, both of those things are really, really important. And honestly, I would not want to work for a company that did not have a decent mechanism of internal mobility. I think there's a risk of too much of anything. If 90% of your hires are internal transfers, like, that's really problematic, because now you've got gaps everywhere else. So like, how are we refilling the roles that those people have vacated, right? So that's a question. There's also, if 75% of our hires are referrals, we might be getting into some affinity bias and some other, like me bias. So that's concerning. So you get where I'm going with this? Like, a really solid company growth recruiting strategy, hi babies, got all the dogs in here now, really does look at all of those entry points and all of those ways that we can effectively recruit. So the next time you're worried about, You okay, abs? Next time you're worried about losing to an internal, just don't. I know that's easy for me to say from where I'm sitting. I want you to look at it through the lens of most companies, and I really do believe this is true. This has certainly been true everywhere I've worked, where we are carefully considering the right mechanism, buy versus build. We're also looking at each incoming application, each sourced candidate in the order received through the lens of what is the right fit for the role, and putting everybody through a similar process. Internal candidates typically will not have to go through a full, 5-person interview round or whatever, because they already did that. So we're not really vetting for like company fit, because the company fit box has been checked. But there is definitely a deeper dive into like role related knowledge, technical capabilities, really making sure that they can do the job. So very rarely is it as simple like, oh, you're an internal candidate, you already work here, check, here's your offer letter. There's almost always still a process, and maybe a streamlined process, but there's still going to be an interview, and there's still going to be that need to collect data, make sure we're making the right hiring decision, and that most importantly, we're giving all of our pipeline a fair review. Okay, so remember, friends, comparison is the thief of joy. Do not worry about comparing yourself to internal folks, to external people who might be applying. You can't control that. You can only control your resume, your application data, your interview answers. Focus on that, do your best, put your best foot forward, and don't stop looking until you sign your offer letter and, well, show up on day one. Things can change. We'll cover that another time. All right, y'all, I hope that helps. Final video of the year. I'm gonna go drink some orange juice. I feel a cold coming on. Hopefully y'all have a wonderful New Year's, and hey, we'll see you next year.